Hello and welcome to University College Dublin and a live Google Hangout on air, where this afternoon we will be talking about the MA in History from the UCD School of History. Joining me today on this Hangout panel are two academics from the UCD School of History, Professor Robert Gerwarth and Dr. Michael Staunton. Each of them will talk a little bit about their own area of research and how it applies to their teaching on the master's programme. But over the course of our conversation, you'll learn a little bit more about the types of modules and specializations of the programme that students can choose to do, some of the reasons why students might consider this as a graduate option for themselves, and why the programme is seen as so prestigious both in Ireland and across the world. My own name is Lisa Flannery. I'm the Marketing Manager for University College Dublin, based in the University Relations Office. I'll be moderating any questions that you might like to type in, so make sure and send your questions in and I'll put them to the most appropriate panel member. Prior to today's Hangout, some of you might have seen a 30-second video that we put together about Professor Robert Gerwarth and his work in researching World War II in particular. Professor Gerwarth might like to speak a little bit more about his area of expertise in that world and how that pertains to his teaching on the Masters. So I'm going to hand over to him now.
Thanks very much, Lisa. Thanks for the introduction. Yes, for those of you who have seen the clip, let me just put a little bit of context on the story that I'm telling in it. Of late, I've become interested in the multinational dimension of the Second World War, and in particular in those people who either volunteered or were recruited into arguably the most extreme formation of the Second World War, the Waffen-SS, which was often perceived for a long time as a genuinely German organization. And as some researchers have pointed out in recent years, roughly half of the 1 million Waffen-SS members were actually non-German in origin. So they came from all sorts of European countries and either volunteered or were recruited into this organization, particularly to fight the Red Army on the Eastern Front. More generally speaking, I'm interested in the history of political violence all the way from the late 19th century through the First World War and into the Second World War. And that actually also reflects my teaching both at undergraduate level and at graduate level. For example, in the MA, I'm teaching a module called Political Violence in 20th Century Europe, which is designed to give students a very broad introduction to the very different themes that can be classed as forms of political violence, from terrorism to wars to paramilitarism. And the module actually covers the entire 20th century, from the outbreak of the First World War all the way through to the end of the Cold War. And what I'm trying to do there is to introduce students to the latest literature, the most important debates in the fields, so that they can pick, if they choose to write their final dissertations on one of these topics, that they can make an informed decision, basically. So my module is, of course, only one of very many. We've got 25 staff members in the School of History, and we really teach the entire breadth from the Vikings to the end of the Cold War. So there's something for everyone, depending on your own interests, which are, of course, vital to the choices that you make at graduate level in terms of the modules that you pick.
Okay. Thank you very much, Robert. We have a question in actually about the split between taught modules and personal research or dissertation, and how that takes place over the course of the year. Perhaps I could ask you to answer that before we move on to talk to Michael, please.
Sure, of course. I mean, there's a fundamental difference between the individual modules and the final dissertation. Not so much that it has to be on a completely different topic, but the modules are in many ways designed to well, actually guide your interests, if you like. So you have a very wide range of modules to choose from. You would pick one, and then you can basically test whether this is something that you would like to pursue further in your final dissertation, which, of course, makes up a very significant chunk of your final grade. So this will become your specialization. But we do encourage people at master level to cast the net widely and to familiarize themselves with different research specialisms that are represented in the schools.
Okay. Thank you very much. As we get more questions coming in, I'll direct them to one or either of you. But next I'd like to hand over to Dr. Michael Staunton, whose own area of academic expertise is medieval history. So Michael, I'll let you take over now.
Thanks, Lisa. That's right, my interests are in medieval history, so I'm really at the opposite end of the chronological spectrum to Robert. I'm interested in my own research in how people thought in the Middle Ages, how people wrote about themselves, how they wrote biographies, autobiographies, how they interpreted their own past. And that probably seems like quite an obscure subject in comparison to, say, what Robert is doing and what many people will think about as history. But it shows you some of the kind of range that we have in the School of History. We have people working in areas, as Robert says, from really the fall of Rome up to the present day. We've obviously got a lot of concentration in Irish history and a lot of expertise in Ireland. But we also have historians who are experts in America, various parts of Europe, Russia, very strong Australian cohort here as well. And as well as that, people take history because of their interests. That's always the starting point. And that's something that we want people to hold on to. And it's not necessarily even to do with what country you're interested in, what period. You might be interested in social history. You might be interested in questions of gender. Or you might be interested in things like, say, literature. You might be interested in aspects of material culture, that is, objects, or you might be interested in texts. And another thing is that while we start with an interest and you continue with that interest, one of the things that you're trained to do if you take an MA at UCD is to make yourself a professional historian by understanding how professional historians work. So that means that in the various courses that you take, you'll take core courses. If you're interested in modern European or American history, you're in with one group. If you're interested in the Middle Ages or the early modern period, you're in with another group. If you're interested in modern Ireland, you're in with another group. And there you learn certain skills about how to use archives, how to use documents, how to deal with the work of other people, and also how to make that your own. Then you also specialize in your own particular area. You can take courses on, say, the study of health and gender, the study of totalitarianism, the study of medical history, aspects of early medieval Ireland. And then when it comes to your dissertation, you use the kinds of skills that you've developed to turn yourself into an independent researcher, and you actually practice it on something that you're interested in.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael. I think that's a really interesting construct that students can make themselves a historian by learning about how historians work, and indeed learning directly from some very established professional historians. I'd like to ask one of you, what is it about UCD and the School of History at UCD that makes a master's qualification from here valuable to students either coming to Ireland from overseas or who hope to work overseas having studied here in Ireland?
Well, maybe if I could answer that, and Robert may have other things to say as well. I think first of all, because UCD as a university and the School of History are regarded very highly. We have a very large research-intensive group of scholars working here. All of us publish. We are known for our work outside of UCD, outside of Ireland. We're in touch with what's going on in our various disciplines. So if you study in UCD, and you'll encounter a range of people here, and people see that you've studied here, they know that you've had a high quality training. It's also the fact that when you're studying when you're taking an MA, a lot of people will want to go on to be professional historians. We know a lot of other people will want to use those skills in other ways. So if you have done an MA with us, you know how to deal with a great deal of information, complex information. You're able to analyze that, and you're also able to work with other people, because that's a strong element of what you do in a master's. You're working with your peers. You're not simply listening to a lecturer. You're actually trying it out yourself. So I think that from that point of view, it's UCD History MA is very highly respected, and it's respected because of the kinds of things that you'll experience as a student here. I wonder, Robert, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, just perhaps a few comments. I mean, I obviously very much agree with what you were saying early on. I think it is important to point out that the UCD School of History is by quite a margin the largest in the Republic, that we offer as a result a diversity of topics and modules that is rivaled by none in this country. Which, as Michael pointed out earlier on, includes not only obviously a strength in Irish history, but also in European and global history. So, for example, we have an annual visiting professorship in Australian history and an annual visiting professorship in American history, which means that we get top scholars from the US and from Australia who bring additional expertise to the school, who offer modules, and therefore enrich our curriculum. Our school is very well in the top 100 history schools in the world, and we've been extremely successful in attracting high-level international research grants from the Wellcome Trust, from the European Research Council, as well as a significant track record in attracting Irish Research Council money, which I think is underlines the research strength of the school in particular. And we always try to keep our teaching as research-led as possible. So we're trying to set up modules that actually reflect areas in which the experts work, so that the students get the benefit of very well-informed opinions and the latest literature, the latest bibliographies, so that they're up to date on the most recent debates in a field of interest to them.
Okay. Thank you both very much for very nice detailed answers to that question. I suppose it could be argued that the study of history nowadays, it could be more important than ever, but some students might not consider that their existing undergraduate degree would lend itself to transferring into the study of history at master's level. Could one of you speak to the kind of degree backgrounds that tend to suit transferring into or developing into becoming a historian at master's level?
I can just say a little about it. That obviously a lot of our students are students who came through studying history, but history these days is different from history maybe even 20 years ago. That we as historians usually connect to other disciplines, whether that's social sciences, whether it's literature, whether it's archaeology. For example, one of our programs is medieval studies, which is deliberately an interdisciplinary program, which relates to those areas, to languages, to English, to archaeology, and so on. So really, people coming from those kinds of backgrounds, if you have experience of and you enjoy reading, dealing with various kinds of, especially written texts, if you can discuss things with others, if you're able to work independently and also work with others, and you have a background on that, then you should be able to do an MA in history.
Super, thank you very much, Michael. And we have a final question which relates to, for want of a better word, career paths. It's asking what kind of areas do students of the Masters tend to progress into? And I know, Michael, you've obviously already touched upon the kind of transferable skills that students will learn from collaboration, from coursework, from dealing with huge amounts of data and interpreting that data from a multitude of perspectives. But would one of you like to speak to the kind of paths that students tend to go on into?
Sure. I mean, perhaps I can start just by sort of following on Michael's latest comment about the transferable skills and the diversity of backgrounds that our applicants and students in the MA have. I think the same is in many ways true for the career paths that people follow after graduating with an MA from the School of History. Of course, not everyone who does the MA in history will become a professional historian or want to become a professional historian. As Michael said, we're teaching transferable analytical skills here, of critical thinking in particular, and our graduates include Nobel Prize winning, Academy Award winning film directors, chief justices, and so on and so forth. So people go into different walks of life. Many become journalists, actually. Many become writers. Many go into the civil service, not only in Ireland but in various home countries. So I think we have a very diverse portfolio in terms of our alumni.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're now coming up to the point of concluding the Hangout. So in a moment I'm going to put up a slide that gives a little bit more information about how prospective students can get in touch with us here in UCD. But before I do that, I'm going to check whether either Robert or Michael have any final points that they would like to make.
Just a final point apart from what you're going to show, Lisa, about applying. If you take a look at the UCD History website, you'll also see that there are certain history graduate scholarships. There's a scholarship that's for Irish or Modern European history. There are 2 scholarships, in fact, for that, and there's a scholarship for women's history as well. So if you're interested in applying, why not take a look at that as well?
Thank you very much. And I'm going to conclude it there. Okay, so I'm going to just pop up a slide now that tells anyone who may be interested in finding out more or applying to the MA in History. So if you want to find out more about joining a top 100 history school in the world, you can have a look at ucd.ie/historyarchives/graduate and professional programs, where there's a full listing of programs available, and there's a specific person you can get in touch with any queries in relation to admissions, and that's kate.breslin@ucd.ie. And finally, if you're ready to apply to enter the program, the URL for that is ucd.ie/apply. I'd like to thank both our panel members very much, and if anyone watching this Hangout wants to submit any questions after having watched it, that's absolutely fine. We will pick those up through the Google Plus page and answer them for you going forward. Thanks very much again to Professor Gerwarth and to Dr. Staunton. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.